So, this happened to me on Thursday, April 25th, and I still can't shake off how terrifying and strange it was. So, I was home alone, getting ready for my 12 o'clock college class that morning, and I opened my blinds to let some natural light in. I glanced at my window to see a man in his mid-30s wearing a baseball cap roaming around my property, with his hands on his hips, walking with a lot of weird confidence. Our yard is kind of like a cliff, and it looks over our 5 acres of property down below. I live in the PNW, so it's a pretty scenic view. I was really confused and thought maybe it was a worker that my mom had hired for our renovations on the house, admiring the view. I'm a little bit uncomfortable at this point because the dude walks to the side of my house out of sight. I head upstairs to see him now roaming around my front yard and my driveway, looking at things, checking out my house, etc. He still hasn't seen me at this point. I call my dad and ask him if we have hired anyone to come by the house, and he says not that he knows of, and tells me he's going to call my mom and ask her, and then call me back. I'm waiting for the call when I notice a strange dude's car. It's a white Honda with no license plates, just parked parallel to my front door. This dude still hasn't seen me, and he's still wandering around. So I take this as an opportunity to remember that I have a security system, and I armed it. So if he did try to break in, it would immediately alert the police. If this was some sort of professional or worker, he would have to ring my doorbell, or knock at least once. He did neither. Just then, I get a call back from my dad saying neither him or my mom hired anyone to come by today, and that I needed to call our local police station immediately. I went back downstairs after making sure to lock every door and window upstairs and called my city's police station. I explained to a woman on the other end what had happened, and she decided she's not going to send out an officer out and instead give me a number to call their emergency dispatch line and told me to talk to them. I call the number she gave me, and immediately I get an automated message saying, "Thank you for calling my town's name, non-emergency hotline. Nobody is available to take your call right now. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. At this point, I'm really irritated because 15 minutes have passed and this weird dude is still lurking around my house while I'm home alone, and apparently that wasn't enough to warrant an emergency to the lady I called at the local police department. I hung up and decided to call 911. After getting in touch with the 911 operator, I was asked a series of questions about his appearance before they were even alert officers near me to start heading towards my house. The whole thing seemed really weird. Nobody was in a hurry to have officers come up to my place when I was a younger girl and home alone with a strange dude. I asked the officer if I could stay on the line with her, when finally, after what seemed like forever, alerted the police to come to where I was, and she agreed, and I went back upstairs to check on the weird guy. And he's now sitting in his unplated Honda, either listening to the radio show extremely loud or on a phone call with someone through the car. It was a very prominent loud male voice coming from his car. Then all of a sudden, I hear the tone you hear when someone hangs up on you, and the operator was no longer on the line. I was really confused when my thoughts were interrupted by an unrecognized phone number calling me. I assumed it was the operator calling me back, so I picked it up. Instead, I was greeted by really creepy, heavy breathing. I'm not sure who it was, but it really freaked me out. I hung up immediately and dialed back 911. I had been pretty calm to this point, but the phone call had put me in a panic mode. I got on the phone with another operator who already knew my situation and address before I even could explain it to her. She said the cops were on their way. 20 minutes had passed at this point. The dude is still in his car, and the cops aren't. Keep in mind I live in a smaller town, so there's no reason why it took the cops so long as it did to come down. Finally, this dude is leaving my driveway right as the cops pull in, and they stop him and ask him a few questions. A cop then comes to my door and hands me a sketchy looking flyer saying it was just a landscaper. He said he had an appointment. I was really relieved and irritated that it was just a dude my mom had hired, until I realized it wasn't. I called my mom back and said the cops said it was just a landscaper that you hired, and that he had an appointment. My mom replies with, "I can assure you we never hire a landscaper. We don't even need one." So, creepy dude, who could potentially be posing as a landscaper to traffic people or rob their houses, let's not meet. I'm not sure if this story belongs here, but I can still remember this day like it was yesterday. My mother's words clinging to my eardrums like plastic wrap on leftover plate. I need you and your friends to be extra careful. There'd been reports of a white truck following little girls home. If you see your friends walking alone, don't let them. You walk with them until they get there, and do not leave them until they reach their front door. To ease her worry, I began walking with everyone to school and back home. It took me longer to get home, but I had the safest location on my street at that time. My house could see into all surrounding parks and school grounds and sat on the top of a hill. It was next door to both the mayor of the housing authority and the SFC, Sergeant First Class of the military police. I did the same routine every day. Go across the street, through the two houses, and to the sidewalk. Go through an alleyway until I reached Tank Destroyer Trail, walked half a mile to the concrete bridge that goes over the street, and finally down the other side to the school side doors. Reverse order. Repeat every year for 3 years. My mother was a drill sergeant, and until that morning I had never really taken her word seriously. I remember telling her, "We live on a military base, Mom. There's no way I'll go missing. Or besides, I'll scream." It's summer in Central Texas, it's a blistering hot day, and summer school had been dismissed early. Me and a few of my friends are walking home together, but today is eerily quiet between us. My gut is buzzing like an angry hive the further away we got from school. For whatever reason, I felt like I was being watched. I do a scan of the area and notice there is no other students around but myself, Aubrey, Ashley, and Amber. Nothing is being said as we get halfway across the bridge, so I break the silence and ask if they're okay. Ashley responds, "My mom and dad have been warning me about this truck that's following kids home." Aubrey chimes in, "Mine too. I think they're just doing that to scare us." "But why?" I ask. "What purpose would that serve them to do that? Maybe keep tabs on us?" Aubrey replied, looking at her phone. Aubrey's dad was a bit of a control freak, but I doubt even he would have done something that drastic to control her. If that was the case, then there would be no need for all of our parents to warn us. "Well, I'm gonna go home this way today," Ashley says as she starts to take a different route home. "What about the truck?" Amber grabs Ashley's hand and grips it tightly. "You need to stay with us." I look over at Aubrey, who's walking a bit faster down the trail. I can hear the fear in her voice. "I'm getting out of here before something bad happens." My hair practically jumps off my body hearing her say those words. All of the danger bells and whistles are going off so loudly that I can barely hear myself talk. "Ashley, at least let us walk you there," I plead. She reluctantly agrees and comes back to the trail with us. Aubrey is a good length ahead of us, so we yell for her to slow down. She turns around and I can see the whites of her eyes. I turn just slightly to my right, and from the corner of my eye, there's an all-white truck, no license plate, and a tinted front window, so you couldn't see the driver. It was slowly driving by the curb on the main road, and it was definitely following us. There were no other cars around, and that made it all the more creepy. I stopped walking and looked straight at the truck. I tried to see if I could make out any distinctive marks, a make or model, but it didn't even have a brand on it. Ford, Chevy, Nissan, no grill emblem at all. My friend stopped, and then we all stared. Whoever was in the driver's seat was certainly looking back at us. All of us held our breaths and waited for it to leave. It didn't. My every sense was telling me to run. My gut was telling me to run. My fight or flight was only flight at that point. I already knew what was going to come next. I placed my leg behind me as I could take a step back. "It's going to chase us. We need to run." Before the others could respond, the engine of the truck roared like a lion. The front tires jumped the curb, and the truck came barreling down the trail. That half a mile seemed to take forever to run down. We bolted down the trail as fast as we could. It definitely was gaining on us. We get to the end of the trail and stopped at the sidewalk that's by my neighborhood street. It was still chasing us. We all shouted and screamed. Aubrey tried to grab her cell phone and dial 911, but dropped it as we were running. Where was everyone? How is no one hearing us cry out? Besides all these houses, whose backyards led to the walking trail? How is it even possible? Is no one seeing this? Can no one hear us? I tell them all to follow me to my house, and when we finally get there, my front door is locked and I don't have my house key. We immediately go next door to the MP officer's house and begin hurling our fists at the door screaming for help. The officer isn't home, but his wife is. She opens the door and we practically get inside. We force her out of the way so we all run inside and we slam the door shut. Miss Janet is asking us all kinds of questions, but we want her to be quiet. Sorry again, Miss Janet. We don't even make it to the couch. We all stand by the door and try to stay away from the windows. We hear the truck bye-bye and decide no one leaves until Miss Janet's husband comes home. Just thinking about it as I'm typing this makes my stomach hurt. 11 years later. Even now, I find myself gasping for air. My mouth dries out and my neck stings as if hot needles are being forced down my esophagus. When he comes home, make formal police reports and tell our parents, our teachers, and other students about the incident, but we never heard any other updates on the truck. From then on, teachers were on every post of the trail for kids walking home from school. MPs were and still are posted on every corner within a 2-mile radius of the school. So, to the creepy white truck, I'm elated to say, let's not meet again. Freshman year, I started a video club that was basically centered around creating and discussing original content for YouTube videos. Since I established it, I was neutrally president and my friend Pete was vice president because he knew a lot about making videos. One day, Pete brings in a couple of other guys who are his friends, Bo, Matt, and of course, John. Fast forward to the summer, and we're all exchanging emails and keep in touch through Facebook. Later that same week, I got a message from both Pete and Matt at the same time, asking if I was at all interested in John romantically. I was super taken back at this because I had no idea that John liked me, like at all. He was always shy and hardly ever started a conversation with me. I said I wasn't allowed to date yet, so it didn't even matter. Flash forward to November of my sophomore year. John had asked me to both homecoming and snowball, a winter formal. I had turned him down both times, gently. Things would start getting weird when he would show up to class that I would be in. Like, he would walk in. This happens most often during English and Latin because he knew both of the teachers well and they let him sit in. He would sit next to me and try to talk to me. After school let out, I would immediately get emails from him, long ones, asking me about my day and other stuff like that. I never replied. Obviously, at this point, I was getting uncomfortable with his constant presence. I tried telling him this, but he didn't seem to get it. Not knowing what else to do, I started trying to distance myself from him. It got to the point where he was outside every single one of my classes after they ended so that he could talk to me. I had friends escort me to and from classes to sweep me away from him. Then, the day before winter break, John gave me a note. I didn't think anything of it. I shoved it in my backpack without thinking. I read it later at rehearsal. I did theater. Nothing could have prepared me for what it contained. It was a bit like this. I hate you. I do not say these words lightly. If you hated me, you could have just told me. I wasted my friendship on you. I thought you were beautiful and smart, but you're just a bitch. A bitch that makes me feel worthless, that makes me want to die. You're the reason why I want to kill myself. If I do so, know that it'll be your fault alone. I'm more depressed than I've ever been in years because of you. What the fuck is your problem? Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the first or worst hate note he sent me. The others came after I got my first boyfriend, after I kissed a boy in front of him, and when I got him kicked out of English class that I was in where he would visit me. Even after all this ugliness, he asked me to the senior prom. The audacity. Things only got worse from there. He manipulated mutual friends into thinking I was the bad guy. He started talking shit about me behind my back, and I caught him doing it twice. And like the coward he is, he immediately shrank from me when I caught him. Those mutual friends tried to explain that John didn't get social cues and that he's socially awkward and that I should let it go. And like an idiot, I did. I didn't report him to any teachers. Everything came to a head the last day of May that year. It was the official last day for seniors. I walked into the pre-class hangout room. It was our theater's director's classroom and everyone said their good mornings there. John was there, and given everything that had happened, I decided to ignore him. When he saw me come in, he made a beeline for me. The room was so crowded, I wasn't able to physically avoid him. He shoved me into the wall behind the door. I fell to the ground, my head smacked against the open door. I was disoriented, but I distinctly remember him saying, "Little bitch," before walking out of the room. I burst into tears of frustration and exhaustion. Those in my immediate vicinity saw what happened and got me to calm down. After that, word got out about John was actually an asshole. I still didn't report him, but I wish I did. John, let's never meet again. I was walking my boyfriend's dogs about a month ago on some trail near the beach. These dogs were both mutts, one husky / chow, other one pit bull / hippo. I think they're both sweet, loving, social, and completely chill. This particular trail leads to an estuary and starts in the state park, but there are only 2 parking spots at the trailhead, so it's nearly always deserted when I'm there. There is basically a maintained trail that goes to the estuary, and then there's an unofficial trail that loops off the actual trail. It is hard to spot and largely overgrown, but I can tell I'm not the only one who uses it. I was walking the dogs in the main trail, and just to get to the estuary, where we typically stop to watch the birds for a bit, when one of the dogs, the husky, started making a low growl and puffed a full mohawk. We live in an area with cougars and bears, so that's the first place my mind went. I drew my pistol. I'm a redneck and a hunter, and I'm usually carrying, just in case, and started backing up the trail. I'd only taken a few steps, dragging the husky still growling scarily away. Pitt was still clueless and was watching us square dopily when a creepy motherfucker, henceforth known as STMF, stepped out from behind a tree. He wasn't scary looking, just the typical REI, outdoorsy looking type that frequented the craft breweries on every corner here in Washington. He was maybe late 40s, early 50s. The tree he was behind wasn't huge. He would have had to position himself deliberately to hide behind it. When I was approaching, he started walking towards me, smiling at the growling, pissed off dogs like it was a bunny rabbit talking to him in a soothing voice with his hand out like he was going to pet him. The dog barked loudly and continued to growl in an unfamiliar and terrifying way. At this point, my pit finally got the act together and looked away from her new squirrel friend. She took in the scene and got in behind the guy and me. Immediately, she didn't puff or growl. Honestly, I don't know if she knows how. She's such a teddy bear. But her tail was out at a weird angle, and she bared her teeth at him. Now, I don't know if it was her threatening looks or if the creepy motherfucker had caught a glimpse of my gun that I was holding down by my side, but he suddenly dropped the Ambler hiker facade and gave me this look that just made my skin crawl. It was pure evil. He didn't move a step after that and didn't say anything else. It was just creepy as fuck. I said something along the lines of, "Don't fucking come near me," and we left quickly. This time I made sure he saw my gun as I turned around. When I got to the part of the trail that loops off, I took it after checking to see if creepy motherfucker was in sight. The dogs were still super tense and on alert, and I eventually slowed down so I could listen, and also because I'm a fat ass and was about to pass out from exertion. The loop meanders wide around the trail and is probably 1/4 mile or so longer than the main path, which itself is maybe about a mile. When I was nearing the point that the loop hit the main trail again, my good boy started to growl again. It was super low, and thankfully the creeper didn't hear it. He was on the main trail heading back towards the estuary. As soon as he was out of sight, we booked it to the last 100 yards or so of the trail ahead. The Super I'd parked next to had its hatch open. It hadn't been open when I got there. I tried to see the license plate but couldn't since it was on the hatch. I wasn't willing to take a second look to pull it down and look. I basically threw my pit in the back of my Jeep. She's 90 pounds with the physique of a small hippo, as previously noted. So I'm pretty proud of that, and my other dog hopped up with her. I jumped in and took off, and right when I turned onto the road, my pit barked. That was the first and only time in 6 months of knowing her that she had ever barked. My best guess of what happened is that as soon as I was out of sight, creepy motherfucker started to follow me, and I didn't know about the other trail. He got to the trailhead ahead of me since the trail was shorter, and saw my Jeep was still there, so he opened his hatch for reasons that just can't have been good, and headed back down the path to find me. When he heard my door close, he raced back to the trailhead. My very, very good girl told him what she thought of him. I swear that bark sounded like a combination of all the dirtiest swear words I know and several I don't. It was off season, so the state park was barely manned, if at all, by rangers. As soon as I got back to the road where the cell signal I called my brother, who is a cop in the town, Park Borders. He wasn't on shift and it took a while for anyone to get out there, but by the time they did, creepy motherfucker was gone. Creepy motherfucker, you had better hope we don't meet again. If you ever attempt that bullshit with another woman, she may also have a scary dog and a full-size pistol to show you the errors in your ways. My stepdogs are trying to protect me, but inadvertently protected you by giving me a way to get away without having to resort to drastic measures. With or without the dogs, you will not get away unscathed next time. So for your sake, let's not meet again.